Head of Trade Investment at the British High Commission in Sri Lanka.
Ayubowan again. Indeed, it's a privilege that we have such a distinguished set of panelists from the private sector who has hands-on experience in Sri Lanka. To start off with, my colleague Vish Govindasamy, who is the vice chairperson of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce and the group managing director of Sunshine Holdings. Ceylon Chamber of Commerce celebrates, I think, close to 180 years in existence. It is the oldest chamber in South Asia for sure, but maybe Asia as well. Then we have Mr. Michael Fernandopoulos, Head of Trade and Investment from the British High Commission in Sri Lanka. We have Jeremy Huxtable, Group Chief Officer, Dialogue Enterprise, Dialogue Axiata PLC. Of course, Ms. Kerry Hallard, President, Global Sourcing Association and CEO of the Global Sourcing Association of UK. And last but not least, Mr. Andrew Heights, Director, Head Operations, De La Rue PLC. So, Sri Lanka, as it was said, is taking off. It is transiting from a basic manufacturing and agriculture economy to a more sophisticated manufacture assembly economy, and the service sector is accelerating. Rather than we coming from the public sector, although I had more than 30 years in the private sector, this is my last stint in the public sector, I wanted these colleagues from the private sector to say what they want to say about Sri Lanka. There is no enforcement by me. I was part of them earlier, so it's a very open, transparent discussion. Two of them are heading back to Sri Lanka tonight, so they might, halfway through the panel discussion, disappear because they have to catch a flight in case they are late. But I hope they will not. Vish, can I start off with you? I would like to leverage on your knowledge and experience in the Sri Lankan private sector, as well as of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, being one of the oldest in Asia. What can you share with the audience in terms of Sri Lanka's present direction? What are the major changes you see happening in Sri Lankan economy over the next 3 to 5 years?
Thank you, Mangala, and good afternoon, and thanks for being here. It's always a pleasure to be here at the London Stock Exchange. I, as a private enterprise, represent a conglomerate, one of the top 50 listed companies in Sri Lanka. The businesses that we are in are healthcare, FMCG, agriculture, energy, and some strategic investments in telecom, etc. But that's not why I'm asked to speak here. As the vice chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, as introduced, it's one of the oldest chambers in Southeast Asia and in Sri Lanka as well. The chamber represents various groups of businesses, has over 700 members, and we are the apex chamber that represents of major businesses, and we lobby and make policy makers on what the private sector businesses require in today's business needs. So recently we concluded our annual economic summit, in which the chamber released the vision for 2025. So I guess this will give you the flavor of what I feel what we want Sri Lanka to do and how we will attempt to get there. The vision calls for a current 89 billion economy to grow up to about 134 billion in year 2025. And how do we go about doing that? And primarily, it has to do with the increasing the export base from Sri Lanka. And some of the highlights I can just quickly give you, and I think most of it was spoken by the various speakers, but I'll just give you some of the numbers. The current growth rate of Sri Lanka is at about 3.7, and we would need to grow at about 6.8% on average year on year for the next 5 years. Our GDP per capita, as said before, is $4,100. We need to get to about $5,700. Our export, and this is where the real key is, currently it's 53% of our total import. We need to get to 100% of our imports, all our exports need to get there. And that's fundamentally is what will change Sri Lanka going forward. And that's where you come in as investors coming into Sri Lanka. And I think everything has been told, what we have to offer, what is there for you, from technology to logistics to infrastructure. Everything is there, and especially with Port City coming in, I think it's a huge opportunity. We need to get to the ease of doing business. We are at the rank of 100. We hope to get to at least under 50. And I think that will allow most of our investors to have easy access on how to start a business there. So these are not just mere words that has been put into a book and released as a vision. We are working with the government right now, and we have 18 groups working on it on each of the sectors that we feel where we need things to happen. The positives that has taken place in the last 4 to 5 years, a lot of groundwork has been done for all this to be achieved. If you look at, I think the deputy governor spoke on the debt restructure, fiscal discipline, defending and keeping a stable currency. Most importantly, the overhaul tax. I think that it was an archaic tax system that we had. The BOI chairman spoke about lots of tax reliefs given all over the place, but now it's very structured, what you can get for your investment. So those are all the good things that has been done. There's a lot of effort on labor reform. I hope that we'll get to it soon. Anomaly in the public sector wages, they're working on it very hard. Education reform, healthcare sector reform, all this has happened in the last 4 to 5 years. So that makes the Chamber's vision a lot easier if we can get our things together and going forward. I had wanted to talk about the economy that's available to us. I think it's been spoken many times on the size of economy between India, China, etc., that whole area. I don't want to go there. I think you've heard it enough. So the market size is huge, what you can achieve from Sri Lanka going forward. The thrust sectors obviously has to be the tourism sector and some of the non-traditional exports. We are traditionally a big apparel, a tea exporter. So we need to get to the service sectors such as the financial sector, IT sector, and other non-traditional exports. So that's where I see the growth coming from in the next 3 to 5 years. We have one of the most transparent and fair judiciary that has been there, and it's been very visible in the last 5 years, independent. So your investments will be very secured through the law system in Sri Lanka. So I think I touched upon various things. I'll be happy to take questions on any of these stuff when the question and answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vish. I failed to mention Vish's company has been very much integrated with India. Particularly, he has spearheaded the House of Tata investment in telecommunications in Sri Lanka. In recognition of all his efforts, the House of Tata nominated him to several boards of their companies in Sri Lanka as well. Vish is a holder of a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and MBA from Hartford University in USA, and is a fellow member of the Institute of Certified Professional Managers of Sri Lanka. He is also the Deputy Vice Chairman of the Chamber and Vice Chairman of the Employers Federation of Ceylon. Now from Vish, I would like to move to Michael. Michael is attached to the UK Department of International Trade and is part of a team based at the British High Commission in Colombo, Sri Lanka. He studied in Birmingham University and is in his 4th year at the British High Commission, having had extensive experience in industries, including financial services, having worked in the City of London and wider London arena for banks such as Barclays and Lloyds Banking Group. Michael, based on your experience in Sri Lanka and the levels of interest you experience, how do you see the direction of Sri Lanka? Would you agree with the views expressed by Vish, or you see it differently? What are the current areas of interest to existing businesses of UK origin in Sri Lanka? And where do the future prospects lay in terms of investment from the UK to Sri Lanka?
Thank you, Mangala. Thank you for having me here, and it's a pleasure being here. Just to build upon, good afternoon to you all. Just to build upon what Vish alluded to. So current areas of interest for UK businesses are in the sectors of infrastructure. So we have companies bidding for projects, everything from bridge building, expressway development, hospital development, wastewater treatment plants, sewerage, etc. And of course, you've got the services sector. You've heard from the likes of HSBC, LSEG, we have Dillaroo, Standard Chartered, and many others in the market. British companies in the services sector, well established, some over 125 years old, others more recent. And we at the British High Commission, we work very closely with these companies and we support them along the way. In terms of future direction of travel and opportunities, you have the Colombo Port City, the upcoming Colombo Port City, which is forecasted to be a regional financial center. That's the Sri Lankan government's ambition, as there is none between Singapore and Dubai. So that in itself poses opportunities for not only our designers, architects, planners, but also further downstream for the City of London corporates, the banks, the fund managers, the insurers, accountants, tax consultants, and other professions. There is another emerging opportunity, which is the opportunity to plug into the global supply chain. As manufacturing houses move away from certain established manufacturing bases, Sri Lanka is well placed to benefit from that, bearing in mind its human capital, geographic location, where over 40% of world trade flows past in the 6 sea lanes adjacent to it, and other cost benefits. And also, as the minister alluded to, making use and using Sri Lanka as a platform into the wider regional markets, utilizing the FTAs Sri Lanka is currently signing with its larger regional peers, creating market access to over 3.5 billion people. So I think now it's an appropriate time to look at Sri Lanka slightly differently. So I would encourage any UK companies here in the audience to partake of the opportunity, and of course we are there to support you in market.
Thank you, Michael. Now let's move from Michael to Jeremy. Jeremy is, can I say, a Britisher or a Sri Lankan? Because he's been living in Sri Lanka longer than for a very long time. Jeremy Huxtable holds the position of Group Chief Officer, Enterprise Business of Dialog Axiata PLC, with effect from 19th April 2012. Dialog Axiata PLC is Sri Lanka's largest telecommunication service provider and the country's largest mobile network operator with over 14 million subscribers, which amounts to 44% of the Sri Lankan mobile market. Jeremy counts a total of 22 years industry experience in telecommunication on the backdrop of multi-country and multi-sector management career spanning over 3 decades. His association with Sri Lanka and his business community started in 1996 when he served as the CEO of Celtel, the pioneering provider of mobile communications in the country. You have been involved with the biggest telco service providers in Sri Lanka over quite a significant period of time. During this time, you would have no doubt witnessed firsthand Sri Lanka's move towards digitalization and how the population, the workforce in particular, has embraced digital infrastructure. In your opinion, how favorably does Sri Lanka rank in terms of digital sophistication, and what is your opinion on the future digital landscape of Sri Lanka?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Firstly, I'd just like to start by saying I've lived there for, I think, 14 years now. And it's a fantastic place to live. If you're going to invest in South Asia and you have to live in South Asia, live in Colombo. I cannot recommend it enough. Both my children are educated there. Both went to NYU, so the education's not bad either. In terms of the digital infrastructure, I mean, Dialog is, I believe, the biggest Sri Lankan investor. We've invested $2.5 billion over the last 24 years. For those of you who visited, you will experience a 4G connectivity virtually across the country. There's 35,000 kilometers of fiber. There are tier 3 data centers, which is basically why you see people like LSEG, IFS, who, all of the big software houses, Pearson, Virtusa, they're all our customers, and we all work very closely with them. We have a very talented group of engineers in the enterprise business who work very closely planning networks, advancing networks. Just last week I was with the LSEG guys who are again revising their network and their principles. Now if you follow that through to the country and the people itself, I mean, we have already nearly 55% penetration of smartphones. So the youth of today is very much into learning on using their phones. At Dialog, we've moved across from just investing in infrastructure. I'm also, for example, I'm on the board of a company called Head Start, which is an e-learning platform. We also have developed mobile money platforms, which are increasingly being taken on by the population. In terms of digitization, I think there's been projects we've worked with the government to improve things in that manner, and those projects are coming along quite nicely now. Within our own organization, we have a very active digitization process. So virtually on the business side, virtually anything you want to do on your mobile phone, you can do remotely. So businesses are able to, for example, activate their own SIM cards, deactivate their own SIM cards, add all the value-added services, monitor all of what happens in terms of surfing the internet, etc. It's actually very, very advanced in what's been built there. And really there is no comparison, I don't think, to any other country within the region in terms of that. At Dialog, we've also invested quite heavily in e-commerce. And just recently, probably the biggest thing that's happened is there's a company called Axiata Digital Labs. Dialog is owned by Axiata, which is a leading Malaysia operator. And we have now 600 people working at what we call ADL, who are basically building software platforms for the whole of the Axiata group. And Dialog is a key part of why that has happened. Yeah, I think Dialog is a success story, and the success story is based on the fact that we have worked very closely with the government. You will find TRC, the BOI, the central bank have helped us at every stage in terms of as we've moved into different areas, particularly into mobile money with the central bank. The licensing regime is quite liberal. The allocation of spectrum is free and fair. As Vish said, the courts are very straightforward, and there's never been an issue in terms of working with that environment for us. And it's been a pleasure for us. I mean, it's been a pleasure for me personally. I started there a long time ago when Celtel was the major provider, and Dialog just launched, actually. It was
huge phones.
Yeah, huge phones. And just to give an example, even those years ago, Sri Lanka was the second market in Asia to launch a prepaid mobile service, which I had the privilege of working on and launching there. And that type of innovation, which is quite is still there. It's still driven by the people. It's still driven by the regulatory authorities who are always challenging us to do more. What can we do? How can we help? And I think dialogue has always come up with the goods when we've been asked to. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Now let's move to Ms. Kerry Halat, President of the Global Sourcing Association, CEO of the Global Sourcing Association UK. She has previously held the titles of CEO of the National Outsourcing Association and Director of the European Outsourcing Association prior to the highly successful rebrand. Kerry is a futurist, frequently speaking on the challenges and opportunities for the strategic sourcing industry. Kerry's focus is on growing the reach and the positive reputation of the sourcing industry globally through the development and dissemination of standards and qualification. Kerry recently established the GSA Standard Advisory Group, enlisting representation from 20 countries and around the world, as well as senior buyers, service providers, and accreditation partners. Kerry's career spans over 20 years in strategic consultancy and corporate communications in the high-tech and business-to-business arena, representing companies to include ICL, Lexmark, IBM, KPN, Quest, Avaya, Crystal Decisions, and Syncom. Kerry received an MBA from Kingston Business School in 2004. Prior to commencing her career in communication, Kerry worked in Eagle Star Insurance Services IT department. Kerry graduated from the University of the West England with a BA Honours in Modern Languages and Information Systems. My question to you would be, now that we have had some perspective on the infrastructure side of things, maybe you could shed some light on the real-world GSA experiences with the Sri Lankan IT companies, and also touch on how well poised Sri Lanka is, in your opinion, to serve emerging global trends in ICT sector.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So the Global Sourcing Association is the industry association for strategic sourcing. We represent the interests of buyers and service providers and bring them together to promote best practice. So, in our guise as being a proponent of positive outsourcing, we decided to outsource absolutely everything ourselves. And probably about 8 years ago, we thought we should also get into the offshoring activity. So we actually outsourced GSA's accounts to Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka ran our accounts for over 6 years. So from a customer experience, I would be very, very positive about the experience we actually had with Sri Lanka. I have to admit, I regret bringing the accounts back from Sri Lanka and bringing them into the UK because they haven't been delivered as well as they were delivered in Sri Lanka. So there's an opportunity out there to tap me up and get my business back from me, I think. So yeah, the quality of work, the warmth of the people, the service levels, everything that we received was really, 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 really positive. So that's really from our experience of working with Sri Lanka. On the other side, obviously, we look at all the different delivery destinations that our members could use around the world. And obviously, look at their profile, what their capabilities actually are. I would say, from my experience, that the capabilities of Sri Lanka are high. It's got an excellent talent pool. It's got excellent infrastructure. It's got lots and lots of opportunity. But there's one thing that I think Sri Lanka doesn't do well, and I think it doesn't do its marketing well at all. So I think Sri Lanka is probably the best kept secret out of all the delivery destinations that we're currently working with. So if you look at UK companies and how much we actually use external delivery destinations, obviously we are a huge, partner and use countries all around the world. So 40% of our offshore work goes to India, 20% of our offshore work goes to Poland. I don't know what sort of percentage of our offshore work goes to Sri Lanka, but I imagine it's much smaller than it really should be. So yeah, my view is the potential is huge, but actually you've really got to start communicating the potential so much better. The story I heard today from the London Stock Exchange is just mind-blowing, exactly what work Sri Lanka's doing. I had no idea it was that vast and that important. Exactly the same with HSBC. Wow, those are major brands doing phenomenal work. I'm really sorry, I had no idea about Port City. So, you know, that has not been communicated to me. Now, I'm an influencer that influences my members as to what delivery destinations they should be thinking about. So if I'm not being communicated with this really important updates and information, then I can bet my bottom dollar that a lot of investors that would be really interested in investing in Sri Lanka probably don't know either. So that's just a word of advice, better marketing from Sri Lanka. But other than that, the experiences have been phenomenal. So.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I can congratulate all the Sri Lankan people because the cricket team is doing very well in Pakistan. You can clap for that. Thank you. And the thing is, I've been to, going back 14 years ago, used to go a lot to Sri Lanka. But after coming on this meeting, I have noticed that it's much different now, because those were very difficult days, and I didn't do much. But I'm advising, I'm a consultant, business consultant, I'm doing my best to promote Sri Lanka. The second thing is that we used to have a lot of trade mission organized by the chambers in London. Now it doesn't exist anymore. So I'll pursue the Sri Lankan government. They should lobby all the chambers in England that they should take their delegation there, because it's a very different thing now. I wish I was younger. I'm 80 years old now. I wish I was younger, then I'll work again full time. So this is all my desire. And by the way, I came to this country in 1961, and I worked very hard. And I'm a Kashmiri. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name's Nick Bray. I work for ProtectBox, which is a UK cybersecurity company, which is a comparison website and marketplace for small and medium-sized businesses. I'm also interested to know about cybersecurity in Sri Lanka, in particular because there were some challenges I know earlier on in this year, but how cybersecurity industries are developing in Sri Lanka, and also what's being done to protect small and medium-sized businesses. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, cybersecurity is one of the big issues that's there now, and I think Sri Lanka caters very well for the larger companies. But you're right, I don't think it just applies to Sri Lanka, but I think it applies globally that most SMEs struggle when it comes to cybersecurity solutions. So I believe I was talking earlier to, I think it's your colleague, is that? My boss. Your boss, okay. You know, there is an opportunity there, and one of the things that's been very successful, as you've probably heard today, is Sri Lanka is a place where people can come and operate and work, and if you fail, it's not hugely expensive, right? And I think that's one of the joys of Sri Lanka at the moment. It is a place where there are companies which will give you opportunities to work with them and to partner with them, and those partnerships can be beneficial in helping develop products and eventually take those products to other markets. And I think Ruindu is probably better at commenting on that than us. But you know, for example, even within Dialogue, we serve 42,000 SME customers currently, and we have obviously the traditional connectivity products, but because of those relationships, they're asking us now to do far more things than we previously did. You know, many of them are adjacent to our connectivity business, but for Dialogue to continue to be as successful as it is, we we're always looking at other spaces where we can, which we can develop into, and security is one of those things that we're looking at very, very closely at the moment.
Hi, this is actually not a question. My name is Eranga. I represent Virtusa. I'm the head of HR for Virtusa UK, Europe and Middle East, based out of London. So I thought of this is the right forum to share this news. So we had Virtusa is a global IT services provider. It's based, started from Sri Lanka. It's a Sri Lankan global company. We have $1.2 billion of revenues as of last financial year ending, 20% year-over-year growth. So the news is, yesterday we completed a process of one of the largest UK banks. It's the second largest customer for Virtusa globally. They completed a ranking process. They wanted to select the best service provider for capability, ways of working, and innovation. So we're proud to announce that we became the first. So we got the rank first, and most of the work is done from Sri Lanka. So I'm very proud to share this news in this forum. So that goes to extension of what Ruindu was explaining, right? How great our talent is and what they think, and they are the future of the technology. So that brings the speed. So we also talk about velocity. So it's just not the speed with direction. So it's what differentiates us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eranga, for that wonderful news. Great to listen to this kind of news, particularly when you are here and when you are talking to the audience. Thanks a lot.
Amal Abewardana, Conservative Friends of Sri Lanka. First, I'd like to congratulate the High Commissioner and the Minister for organising this event and the various panels that came. I think a running theme that this has been a very good event, and a lot of success stories have been told, some of them for the first time, including that one just now from Eranga. So there is a very good story to tell, but unfortunately, it's not being told very much, and it's not being heard very much by much of an audience outside Sri Lanka. I was wondering what can be done really to market Sri Lanka better, because that really isn't happening. Follows on from what the lady said earlier. It's not really happening to any great degree, and that really is where we need to step up as a country.
Yeah, I do agree, and it's not only outside Sri Lanka. I believe that most of the things that has been done has not been necessarily communicated within Sri Lanka also. Lot of things have been done. Lot of building blocks have been put in place. It's getting connected. And people, I came from the private sector after 32 years in the private sector, came back to the public sector to help, and then we've seen how things are being done and got involved with most of this transformation that has been done, trying to accelerate it and trying our best. But going forward, we do agree that there is a good story to tell, and it needs to be told. It needs to be taken out. We need to work out a strategy, country branding, and also going forward, how to market Sri Lanka to greater audience. I've been traveling to Tokyo, Osaka, Ahmedabad, now London, many other places, Hong Kong, Beijing, Singapore, many places we've been speaking like this, and everyone is surprised what Sri Lanka is presenting. But there are a lot of other news also about Sri Lanka. So this is not the only thing that is being heard. So that is where I think all the colleagues from the private sector who has traveled along with me, not the same people, different people, going to different locations, and they've been orchestrating the same story. So giving validity to what we see. So it is not just a story being told by public sector people, just to please the audience or just to paint a nice story, but to tell the real story of Sri Lanka. So I think we've been able to do that today to some extent. We will continue to do that. We will take that message back to BOI as well as to the ministry and the government. And we'll try to do that as much as we can. And I think that certainly is the way forward. Yes, I think Kiri wants to answer.
Yeah, just to add to that. So I've done work in the past trying to raise the profile of Sri Lanka, and I must say the messaging set that I'm hearing today is the strongest I've actually heard Sri Lanka present itself. So I really like this positioning of being the digital gateway. Much stronger brand messaging. I think in the past the play has been very tactical. It hasn't been a strategic play at all for breaking into the UK marketplace. So I think that you're getting there. There is progress. But if we look at the way, so Lakmini asked me to promote this event to our membership base. And I got given a flyer that actually, one, had the wrong address on it, but two, just named a few of the Sri Lankan delegation that were actually going to be here. So I doubt if many of my members have actually attended and joined this event. Had we known that Chris Trill from HSBC was going to tell the story that he was going to tell, had we known that London Stock Exchange was going to tell the story they were going to tell, De La Rue, Dialogue, and the other speakers, then I think you'd have a different turnout of investors actually in the room. So it is talking too much about Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka, not enough of the evidence of, what you're actually doing. So it's getting stronger, and I congratulate you on the islands of Genuity and what you're doing. But you've got to move from the sort of tactical play into a big strategic play. And also you've moved away from the positioning where it's very much focused on Sri Lanka being a destination for accounting. Obviously, Sri Lanka obviously has a huge number of SEMA qualified accountants, but obviously the whole space of FAO and accounts outsourcing is one of those areas that's going to be hugely hit by automation. So I'm glad you've moved away from that positioning. So.
I think that brings an end to the Sri Lanka Investment Forum 2019. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you found it very informative. I certainly did. And I hope it improves your understanding of many investment opportunities available to you in Sri Lanka. And so, to close the event, I'd now like to invite everybody next door into the avenues where we will have some networking and I think some rather needed refreshments. Please note that there will be several Sri Lankan companies representing the ICT sector present at the forum, should you wish to speak.